All right, well, for people who are joining this live stream, this is an internal meeting of our incremental language development effort for Wolfram Language, mostly talking about features which are going to be in the upcoming version of Wolfram Language, some a little further out. It's kind of an assortment today, and we are starting off with a rather simple thing called authentication dialog, and I'm about to find out what it does. And hopefully this will say ask for a username and password. Fine. So let's say this is me and pass, and it comes back like that. Great. So this is just for use on the right-hand side of all the authentication. Typically that will be like this, right? And what are we doing here? So this is an example. What's this here? So we're saying here in this design, it will say public key. So those are two different fields.
So yes, the list case lets you specify whatever fields you want. And the question is whether we're happy with that second element being the syntax for key, field name, initial value, and masking.
How does that compare to what happens in form objects?
I think this is the we took the example from form object during our last meeting.
Okay. And if I said this, for example, that's really weird.
What would you expect?
Well, I was thinking it was, okay, so that's really a default value.
It's the initial value for the field, yes.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. Is that what we want for the failure case?
I believe this is what forms do.
No, they give a failure object.
Is there information about what the failure? I mean, in this case, it's going to be the user canceled.
Well, there's a different way of doing that. I mean, why don't you just look at what is being done for forms? I think I don't need to. Let's not do that right now, right here. I mean, I can do that, I guess, for you right here, but it seems like a kind of a waste of time.
I understand. Let's move on.
Could whoever's typing in our ear please mute themselves? Thank you. Okay, so that was that. And if I do this and I put in something crazy here, I think it's just going to give me, okay, it's going to do that. If I say cancel, okay, it does that.
I didn't even know there was a dollar canceled. Is this documented?
I don't know. Let's find out. That is a good question. I have to say I'm skeptical, but let's take a look. Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, that makes perfect sense then.
Yes. Okay, so you should do that for the canceled case. But I think the failed case, I don't know how to force the failure here, but I'm pretty sure that form functions have a failure object that comes back. Make sense?
I'll chat with Carlo about that. Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at this one then. Oh boy. Okay.
So I received the spec for this last week. There was some work needed from Carlo to get dynamic updating of forms working properly, and it may not quite be working properly in this build.
Well, that didn't work because I set two-legged there, and then it suddenly.
Right, because then it's some sort of auto-submitting thing that I have an open question out to Carlo about. And I don't know that Carlo's code is in fact live in last night's build. There may have been.
Oh, well, this is also a prototype build, so who knows what's going on.
Okay. Okay.
So this is okay. So I'm just going to fill in random garbage here and see what it does. And so this is now responding. Okay. Okay, that's really very cool. It's very nice. Okay, what's this going to do in the cloud? Does this work in the cloud?
It will. It won't use form objects as the back end because form control doesn't yet work in cloud notebooks. So it will be some custom assembly of pop-up menus and input fields that will
Okay.
look pretty much the same.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's look at documentation.
And we can make this work in the terminal as well. And I'm
Well,
working
that's
on
really nice.
today.
What's that?
I'm working on that today.
Okay. That is really nice. So can I see anything along those lines? I mean,
So
can I see it on your screen?
there's some examples in the draft ref page of what the terminal and the Wolfram script examples will look like.
Okay. Do I have to update my docs from the last 10 minutes or something?
No.
Well, I probably should do it just in case, because there will have been a lot of stuff going in recently. Okay. So you believe the documentation is also finished for this, is that correct?
I believe it's ready to be reviewed, yes.
Okay. Did we work on it before, or did you just...
We looked at it in authentication meetings. We haven't done a proper documentation review of it.
Okay, what are the other things other than secure authentication key? Do we also have permissions key and things as an...
There's username, password, there's permissions key, and secured authentication key. And then, then the user can specify their own list of keys.
Okay. So, I mean, we did discuss the possibility of generalizing this thing to be a more general, just get me a random association of data. Isn't that correct?
Right. Well, so there's nothing particularly authentication-y about the design, about the functional design. This would work equally well for just about any form object. So this could, other than the auto masking and the forms that we choose to sort of pre-bake, this could easily have been form dialog rather than authentication dialog.
Well, but maybe we can have that separately.
Maybe we can have that separately, yes.
Is there any reason this needs to be experimental?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Do we really want to say displays? Shouldn't we say puts up a standard or a dialog for entering authentication information? Let's say puts up.
I don't think we use that sort of language, right? I mean, we have
Let's look at what input says.
Right. Well, input
requests input. Okay.
Right, but right, we have
dialog input does say interactively puts up.
Ah, okay.
I've never really liked that turn of phrase, but that's what we do there.
I think it's better than displays because displays doesn't suggest that there's any.
Well, but in terminal, this isn't putting up some new window. This is.
Oh, I see.
Presents.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, presents is pretty good. That seems to more or less work for the terminal case.
Dialog is using initiates. Not sure if it's useful here.
That might be better. Does dialog work in the terminal?
Do you mean dialog input or do you mean dialog?
Either one.
Dialog does. Dialog input probably does not because that's a notebook world thing. Choice dialog does because it can.
Okay.
But generic dialog inputs, I don't think that makes any sense.
Should we say username, password, authentication information, since that's what it does? Okay. Okay. Seems very reasonable to me.
So there was one
Seems
issue with
very
the
reasonable.
examples, and that is that that DocuTools was unable to actually capture images of the dialogue rather than just showing the output. We used to have that facility, but we don't anymore.
Well, I don't know.
The question is how important it is to build that back out.
I think it'd be nice to have. I don't think it's critical. I think it's pretty confusing here without that. I think it'd be nice to have, but it doesn't. We don't need to hold up 11.3 for it exactly.
Okay, I'll follow up.
Did you do the knitting for all of these things? And is
No, the knitting is undone.
Okay. Do we need to? Let's not do that right now. We got a different set of people in this meeting. We don't need to do the knitting here.
Okay.
So this looks good though. Okay, should we move on? Let's see. Oh well, we have a question from the live stream. The person says, might be off topic, but does this interact at all with standard HTTP requests that return a code 401 authentication required? The answer is yes, right? I mean, this is something that we can use for URL execute, is it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, if curlink was new in last night's build, we would have seen it. We would have seen this working already.
Right. So what this is doing is, and the user here is showing that there is already a dialogue for that case, and that's correct. And the whole point here is that we can do authentication arrow, and then we can give the explicit username and password if we want to, which will then pre-fill. So for example, we could do this, and then what should happen is if I go there to go to a, I don't know what can we go? Internal.wolfram.com or something. That may not require authorization for me. Something or other like this. Well, something is very confusing here. Why didn't it pre-fill that? A, this font's wrong there, but B, why didn't it pre-fill the username here?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look at how this is wired in.
Okay.
Calling authentication dialog directly would definitely be able to get this right. So the question is how it's being called from the curl link code.
Okay, so you're saying if I said that this is just authentication dialog
with a rule delayed rather than rule.
Why?
Because you want to delay authentication until the time that URL execute needs it. I mean, I suppose you could do it immediately when processing the arguments.
Yeah. Do you have an example for this?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. That failed. Do I dare to put my actual credentials in here? Oh, this is all broken. So I put credentials in and I put correct credentials in and it reissued that dialog. So something is wrong here.
Yeah, I'll take another look.
This is in the prototype build, so who knows what's going on with that.
Do you know if that's today's?
Let's find out.
Just so that I can track it down later.
Maybe no, it's who knows.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, let's move on. If we're ready to move on.
I have a quick question about $counsel. I'm thinking about it. Do you think it should be a failure queue object? Because right now it's not, but perhaps it should.
Interesting. Okay.
I think it should be there. If we are going to get $counsel sometimes.
I kind of agree.
I think it's in the same category as $avoided.
What does Itai think?
I was muted. No wonder people seem to be ignoring me. You know, I'm not 100% convinced. I mean, right, it is say $aborted failure queue.
It is.
It is.
Oh, it did. It says so right there. Then yeah, I guess my initial instinct is it probably.
Well, what happens in, for example, aren't there interrupted? Isn't there an interrupted as well, or is that no? That's aborted. That's $aborted.
Aborted. Exactly.
I don't know. Can somebody? I think the answer is probably yes, but maybe you could send out something to core design and just see if anybody objects.
And then we could maybe have a slightly longer discussion in LCC. This is a LCC-ish sort of feel.
Right.
So.
Okay. But why don't we just send out mail? Because I think if anybody's going to object, there's going to be somebody we're not expecting who's going to object to it.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay, let's move on. All right, I am unconvinced by this suggestion. Okay, so right now we have commonest.
Right.
I don't really believe in this. I'm sorry. I think most of the time
I
can say that I don't think I've ever wanted rarest.
Yeah, it's a rare function. Let's move on. I don't think we will need this. Okay, let's next thing here. This is funky but interesting. So this is a generalization of repeated timing, I think. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Oh, I think the name is definitely wrong.
Well, definitely, hopelessly wrong. But so let's do, I don't know what we can do here. Let's say,
I mean,
something that won't cache. I'm trying to just think of something that might,
right. Repeated timing is currently 1 arg, right? So we could add a second argument.
We could, which gives a, I think, let's just check it as 1 arg. No.
For at least t seconds. Well, I mean, we could add a third argument and...
We could, but I think the question really is, do you want to give a distribution? So for example, we have a similar issue with ping time, right? So if we have, where's a good place to ping? Wait a minute, getting our node on Twitch saying that it seems super useful to him, but which thing is super useful? Profile or? Okay. Okay, let's just look at this for a second. Give me a website that isn't totally fast to ping. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might be bbc.co.uk. Who knows? Okay, so then let's get 20 pings to that. Okay, so ping time is okay, actually we've got some comments on the chat that are sort of interesting about rarest for a second here. Someone is asking for a function that shows the most frequent rare words in a string. Right, that is essentially TFIDF, which we were supposed to have as a top-level function. Does anybody know what happened to that? Because we certainly have TFIDF as a net encoder.
I have no idea what TFIDF is.
Term frequency inverse document frequency. It is a, how the heck is it?
We remember some discussion about this with Alan's group when we were looking at word frequency data, but there was sort of a discussion about building up the corpus for it, and it's been many months since that discussion, so I don't know where that ended up going.
Well, we were going to have a thing that gave one, so we have word frequency, right?
Right.
Word frequency data, rather.
Yeah.
So if I say word frequency data of rare, it will tell us the frequency of the word rare in corpora. So then the question was, if I say word frequency, let's see, word frequency data is with respect to a certain corpus, right? There's a second argument that gives the corpus specification.
Well,
No, there isn't.
yeah, it's based on the ngrams database.
Okay, but we talked about having other possible corpora.
Yeah, I don't remember that discussion was kind of a rabbit hole that went off into a different direction. And I don't know what we ended up doing with respect to other corpora, but that was one of the things we talked about.
Right.
Frequencies
Okay.
and generalization for an arbitrary.
But the TFIDF thing is something that I have always thought is useful, and what on earth happened to that? Where did we? Where is TFIDF? I know we have a TFIDF in something here. Oh my gosh, that's funky. Oh, feature extract. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, this insane place to get. Okay, look. Okay, let's get a little piece of text. What's a good piece of text? Take, let's see, text sentences of Wikipedia data armadillo, comma 5. Just to have a piece of text. And then the claim would be, oh, what on earth is going on there? What just happened?
Saw something related. Try capitalizing armadillo. There was something related to a change in the Wikipedia API that was being looked at.
Well, that better be fixed because that's
Yeah,
a big
I think
mess.
that's something that's being looked at by some other people that I saw.
Okay, can we make sure that that actually gets done?
Yeah, I'll check on that right now.
Okay, so let's take that, and now what we're saying is feature extract of that armadillo text. And I think we probably want to say first of that, don't we? Well, no. Those are multiple sentences. Well, who knows? Feature extract that TFIDF. Am I going to get something totally stupid there? Okay. What on earth is this? Okay. Magnificent. No idea what that is. Okay, so I don't quite understand what we would actually return from TFIDF. I know we thought about this a while ago. Can we put that into the let's put that in the ILD list and also ask who is PMing here? Is it Sushma?
Sushma. Yep.
Okay. Can you ask Jerome and
Okay.
yeah, whether they have some sensible suggestion for what TFIDF could do as a top level function?
Okay.
It seems a little questionable to me. Okay, let's come back to this. And what I was talking about was ping time. You know, one routinely wants to get the distribution here, maybe, but I don't even know what this means. What does this mean? This is a plot of what? A distribution of the times it took? That's pretty random. I don't understand what this is.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is either.
I mean, there's clearly all sorts of interesting internal profiling data. Okay, I just don't know what this is. So we'd have to ask Daniel for more input here. Let's do that, Sushma, and move on right now.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to cached function. Okay, this is interesting, it seems to me. So what this is it's analogous to once. And this was suggested, I'm not sure who suggested this, just like we can have local cache of something like, actually, what is the local cache thing? So that's the local cache of a cloud object, right? Of some particular cloud object. We'll store a local cache of that cloud object. Oh, look at that beautiful multiplication sign that we saw there. Let me just look at that again, just to admire it. Oh, how nice. Let me just see whether I can really admire it properly. doesn't work in that case. Hopefully,
Well, it's sine. No, that's correct.
It's not correct.
It
not
is
for this
correct. It's sine. It's a mathematical function times the opening of a vector.
Okay, but in the case of plot, it should
no, that's ridiculous. It would be woefully. Besides the fact that it would be impossible to implement, I think it would drive people nuts, and it
why? Why does it matter that there's a multiplication sign there? It is multiplying it.
Because people don't want to see their implicit multiplication sign.
Many more people make that mistake. Oh, look, it just put one in. That's nice of it. When did it put it in? Okay, hold on. Let me see when it put it in. Oh, what happened there? That's interesting. I like that very much. I mean,
all right. Well, what happens if it's not in plot?
Oh, I'm sure. Well, let's see. Sine x times x, y, z. Very nice.
Okay.
Are you happy?
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yes, because I would be very angry if I saw an implicit multiplication sign there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Wow. So okay, I thought we were doing like a mathematical function, not mathematical function thing, but apparently you've completely changed the heuristics since I was last.
Well, I think the heuristics have been tweaked because this case, I view this case as really nice because that's going to save a whole bunch of elementary errors.
Okay.
I mean, look at that. That's nice too. And I really like the fact that it's an X because it kind of suggests something is wrong, even though, we know it's a times sign. Right. Anyway, this is something we should have added a long, long time ago. I'm very happy about it right now. Okay, let's talk about cached function. So the idea of cached function is that it automatically sets up a memoization of the function, similar to the way that once does it.
Once doesn't set up a memoization,
no,
right?
Once does something once.
Right. It caches that one expression exactly.
Exactly so, yes. So was there any more detail, Sushma, to that suggestion here about cached function?
No, this is it.
Great. Okay.
So why would we have G and F being different? So don't we want to have some sort of, I want to cache, I don't see why we need two names.
Right.
I'm not sure why either.
Right. You could have G of X blank equals once of some expression, and that would, I think that would.
No, I don't think so, because what this is saying is every time that, well, look, we have we have this type of thing, right?
Right, and wouldn't once do exactly that?
No.
No.
Oh, you're saying no, because the once only does it for the actual once expression.
Right, and every time, yes, but you're going to literally be substituting in the value of 2, right? So f of 2.
You're proposing that this is f of x blank colon equals once.
Right.
Of
f of x.
Why does that work? Why does that work? Because
every time an x is substituted in, that thing is evaluated the first time, and every subsequent time, it'll just look up the cached result.
Let me think about that. So, but that's assuming, because you say this symbolic expression on the right-hand side that is delivered by the delayed assignment is just that expression.
Right. So, right, if you now, when you evaluate f of 2, it's going to evaluate once of f of 2. So the first time f of 2 will be.
Wait, hold on. Let's. What's that?
All right, we might run into.
I don't think this is right because we need to actually define what f of x is. I mean, it's all very good saying it's this, but.
Right. So well, then we could say, right, it's g of, right. So then we could say it's g of x. And
let's do this. So let's say it's once of x squared there.
Right.
Okay. So now you're saying f of 8.
And make it.
Let's clear this.
Print.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's say print x. Actually, let's do this. Let's say echo. Let's be modern. Say echo of x squared. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So f of 8 echoes. Magnificent. F of 7 echoes. F of 8 doesn't echo. That seems pretty reasonable to me. It's cool. Does it, okay. Is it efficient?
Should be, right? Because it creates a hash table of some sort of the expression. Once works by creating a hash table of things it's evaluated.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of how to present this, yeah, I mean, okay, so let's just write, for the sake of argument, let's just write Fibonacci this way, okay? Just to check that it actually works. Okay, so what you're saying is that it's fib of n is fib of n once, so fib of n minus 1 plus fib of n minus 2. And then we're saying, fib of 0 equals fib of 1 equals 1. Okay, so now we're saying fib of, so now just let's check this. So let's say fib of 10 or something, that comes back, and we'll say fib of 100, and comes back nice and fast. Well, that was easy. I think that's even quite a reasonable looking piece of code. What do other people think? Jose, what do you think about this?
It looks fine to me. I was thinking, I was looking at how once is implemented, and it seems fine. It's using persistence value internally.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. That changed. It was using a hash, but now it's using persistent value. So you could even make it, I guess, persist across sessions if you wanted to, which might not be right. Once of X per is equivalent to once of X per kernel session.
Right.
But if you made it more persistent than that, then that would actually be quite useful, right? Because if you have something that takes a long time, yeah. You don't need to start from scratch after you reboot your computer.
I think this is wonderful. I think the main bottom line here is we just have to promote once a bit more impressively. I don't even know where once is, and we probably also need to give some examples. So who is dealing with the once documentation? Is that Roman or somebody else?
Yes, it was Roman.
Yeah, it was Roman and me, yes.
So we should put some examples like this in there. Mm-hmm. And we also need to make sure we can add this to some pages wherever we discuss that kind of dynamic programming solution, which we've been talking about for 30 years. We should be talking about this instead. This is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
We should probably go through and look in the documentation for where we've talked about dynamic programming and so on. If you can try and look at some of those things, and then we also should figure out where we should mention once, and like in the functional programming pages, we should be mentioning it. Let's see. Do we want to have a quick look for that? I would like to actually get through our whole agenda today. Kind of should be here somewhere, I think, because you can use it in functional programming, right? You can put it anywhere. Well, do you guys want to come up with some suggestions for where to put it?
I don't know. I would have to think.
Okay, fine. All right. To be continued there. Okay. Well, so then this suggestion can go away because it's already been done. Good. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay, so this is, yeah, so the suggestion here is that we be able to get session information. Just like we can get system information, we should be able to get, I mean, it's a crazy thing that we haven't had something like this. I mean, if I say $@, I'll get this kind of crazy list here. I have no idea what those are. This is getting weirder and weirder in some of the things that are present here. I don't even know what these are. But who knows what those are. But in any case, the idea would be that we could do something like session information, and then we could say something like defined functions, and it would give us a nice data set of defined functions. What do people think? Or data set, or symbols with values. And that session information open close would be some kind of interface that is like the system information interface, but about sessions.
And this would include timing and memory and things like that?
Could do. Why not? I mean, it's anything, yes, why not?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in other words, one of the things, probably the default, would be to show on the front page defined symbols and defined functions, right? So if you just do session information open close, this would give you kind of the state of your session. What have you defined? You've got X defined, you've got this, you've got that.
What's a function?
Yeah, good question. I mean, right. So, I mean, a thing whose down value with a defined down value.
Okay.
I mean, we can also have a more technical name there, but the basic idea would be to do something like this for a session. Go ahead.
Restricting to global, I guess. I mean, how does it know?
I think by default. I mean, but look, what it could do, this thing here would do that, perhaps, or at least things on context path would be the right thing to do.
Oh, that right, which are not in system.
Not in system.
Yeah, well, we have quite a lot on $context path. You may not really like that.
Okay, well, fine. So that would have to be tweaked a bit. But the basic idea here is I really think this is a good idea, to be able to have some kind of panel that gives you the status of the session. And particularly, people have asked for ages and ages and ages, having just a nice little table of what variables are currently defined.
Yes, so this reminds me, we need heuristics here to eliminate dollar variables and this sort of thing, which are kind of too internal.
Yes, I agree. It needs some heuristics. So, and we can do, the OpenClose version can use a bunch of heuristics to decide what to display on the front page. It can have a thing where you press you click one of these things to go and look at more detail, etc. So, I mean, I'm not sure exactly, I think we should just try and start building this. I think it's a rather straightforward thing to build. We should just try and start building something that has the sort of similar design to system information.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think also once we have this, we can imagine some kind of UI thing that will pull up session information, possibly even from a menu or something. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, this can be quite flexible, yes.
Yes, I had a comment. What was my comment? I was waiting for you to finish and my comment ran away. Right, so certainly things like this, right, including like, I would know what I was going to say. Right, so system information is not something that dynamically updates, right? So
no, it does dynamically update. It does.
Only very small pieces of it update, but the purpose of system information is not to show the state of the system now. It's to freeze dry a snapshot of the system so that people can communicate.
Hey, I have a question, Lou. This is really bizarre. Yesterday, I was looking at this in another meeting, and I was really surprised that my keyboard wasn't showing up. But today, my keyboard is here.
On the same hardware?
Same machine.
I can't explain that.
Okay, the phantom keyboard. Let's just take a look at one thing just to see. That is the weirdest thing. I mean, I was sure I'd always seen the keyboard on here. Oh, that's just crazy weird. That's a different version.
Right now, for example, if you were to disconnect one of those monitors, I don't think they would disappear, although I don't know that for a fact.
They don't. The only bits of this that are that are dynamic are these openers that Stephen's about to open here, right? And notice the checkbox at the bottom that says show dynamic values, because really the purpose of this is not to be dynamic, but it's a useful thing to know which button is the scan previous track button, etc.
Right.
What do you mean? I mean, so wait a second. If I
Right.
press something on my keyboard, nothing's going to happen here. Is that correct?
If you press one of the things that's reflected in this display.
Well, I did.
so
I
if you
just
had
tried pressing. Okay, so I'm going to press. I don't even know where the scan.
I don't know if the binding is correct, or but if you had a joystick attached, you'd be able to see the value.
Then I'd be able to see it dynamically.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, why is my mouse not listed here?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's now it's not the driver isn't declaring it as a mouse anymore, so system information doesn't see it, would be my guess.
As a HID device. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Okay. Fine. But so your question implicitly here is, does session information return an object? I mean, this thing here, if I were to ask for head of %32, it rather bizarrely will be called a system information data object.
Right, which is the correct thing.
Yeah.
I
and
mean,
so
yeah.
Similarly, for session information, we want to do the same thing. It would be very nice if session information could be dynamic. Is there a reason why it can't be?
Well, I don't know that it necessarily should be dynamic. Right, because you might want to know, what was the state of my session when I did blah. I guess
Right.
Lou may have a clearer answer as to what would be the costs and benefits of making the default 0 argument form fully dynamic. But certainly I think some of these things will not want to be dynamic.
Well, it depends on what you're showing, right? If you're just showing some small number of variables and symbols and their values, then that cost is minimal. If you're showing something whose value happens to be, a 30 gigabyte data set, there's going to be a cost, which we won't necessarily know before trying to display it.
Well, but so long as we wrap it appropriately and short and so on, we shouldn't take
time constraints.
Right, but we would need to be continually evaluating some function that scans all of context path and applies whatever heuristics and whittles that down. And I don't know how often that would be. I guess this is something we could control the refresh rate of.
Okay. Somebody, by the way, points out on the live stream that a palette with a variable editor would also be very useful.
Right, that's the issue. Is as soon as you give somebody the ability to see these things, they're going to want to change them and clear them and remove them and rename them, all within the same interface. Absolutely.
And
well,
people
that's a lot of work. and what do you want to give up in order to make that happen? Unless you have a magic clone Lou button.
Right. I mean, if we have a clear use case for this, then...
Well, people have been asking for it for a very long time.
For which?
Mostly for the thing which displays, the first thing they want is something which displays the values of variables, where they can immediately see, oh, I've defined X and Y and Z, and they're this and this and this. Okay? Now, they probably want something beyond what, they probably want something a little bit more detailed. Which is to be able to know on which input line that variable was defined, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is clearly mushrooming into a more complicated project, right? Because they want to be able to click on that in this display. They want to be able to click on it and go and see what the actual input line where X was set to 5 was.
Right, which is completely impossible.
Unless the debugger is turned on.
Yes, unless the debugger is turned on, right? Because the kernel has no idea what notebook evaluated what, much less where in the notebook.
But there are some things that could be useful, like a dependency tree of the functions you have defined. And perhaps that's not so difficult to compute.
A dependency tree.
Yes,
Yes.
that would be useful. I mean, there are many of these meta functions.
Mhm.
Okay, so look, question for session information. Is there a realistic, fairly lightweight thing that we could do that would actually be useful that will show sort of the basic information about the state of your session? That includes variables that are defined. It includes memory information, how long the session's been running, those kinds of things. Possibly, if it knows it, which notebooks are connected to that session.
Well, that's not a meaningful question. Assuming this session is a kernel session, right? I mean,
yes.
So, right. So certainly I think we have how much time has elapsed since the beginning somewhere. We certainly have current memory in use, max memory used. Depending on sort of what heuristics we use, it's probably fairly lightweight to get, global systems which are not secret dollar variables with immediate values and those with down values. And I don't know if we want to worry about other values.
Okay. On our live stream, there are 2 comments.
Okay.
Spreadsheet kind of editing is sometimes useful as one statement, which is a little bit different from this issue, because that's something that we do have coming supposedly with TableView, if TableView ever gets finished. If I'm not mistaken, is TableView in the system at this point?
I don't think it's TableView. I think it's.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is.
And I think it even works. Wow. Why have we not told the world about this?
Because you're using the prototype build. And there, I mean, the.
Why isn't it evaluating something?
Well, maybe that's one of the reasons why it hasn't moved from the prototype build. I mean, the last status that I got from John on this was that.
Oh, it's there in the head branch build. It's there.
Oh. Interesting.
But it doesn't evaluate.
Not only does it not evaluate, it looks like it's getting stuck evaluating.
I mean, that's quite lovely. By the way, we've got a bunch of background noise here.
Right.
Not only does it get stuck, it's actually uninterruptibly stuck.
Okay, well, it may be that make expression rules were never created for it. Although why that would create something uninterruptibly stuck actually isn't right. Then it should just fail.
I can make a note.
Obviously, it's not finished. And last I knew, John, basically Aaron had a sort of complete thing, and John thought that there were issues that he needed to review and make sure they were worked through. So
I mean, this is further along than I thought it was, and certainly it does seem to allow editing. What does it do? Okay, it does the horrifying thing that spreadsheets do. That is disgusting, but I guess it's what people are used to. And it has some bizarre behavior here with this string-like thing. Okay. We should find out what's happened to this. People on the live stream have now repeated this themselves and confirmed that it is in the pre-release version of 11.3. Okay, but it obviously isn't working properly. Well, this would be a good thing. I mean, I guess this is for Parth, but for goodness sake, let's not have John work on this in any way. So, Lou, do you know who is the person in the front end group who's actually dealing with this?
I'll communicate to Parth. I'm not 100%.
Well, it's Aaron is the person who wrote this, but I mean, right? John is not going to allow this to go in without his seal of approval.
Absolutely, but I just would like to know the status.
Okay.
Okay. Question. So, the question of the variable editor palette. I really do think we should look at this, and whether that comes from a session information thing or whether we just view that in a different way. By the time we have dynamic and so on, it really, to mock up something like that is not difficult. There are clearly plenty of gotchas in it. But it would seem to me, well, or is it difficult? I don't know. It would be a good thing to try to mock up. Lou, I think that's in your area, although...
An editable table of variables and values?
Yes, I think that's the thing people would really, really like.
And functions? Or are we talking just about own values? Or are we talking about...
Well, let's start off with own values.
Generally with...
We could cross that bridge. I mean, the more complicated bridge is obviously more things, but I don't think we need to go there yet. I think that would already be quite let's see. My recollection is when we've looked at this before, and I have to say it's been a while, that it has quickly descended into utterly into great complexity.
Oh, by the way, in the 11.3 release build from last night, at least on Linux, the TableView evaluates just fine for me to itself. And let's see if I edit it, if it will. Yep, it's working just fine. So I think it's something with your particular builds, or maybe there's a Mac specific issue we'll need to hunt down.
Okay. Well, this is in 11.2. Wow. Okay, it's generating an internal error in 11.2. Whatever that is. Okay, and 11.2 it evaluates. How do you actually get the data out of it? Anybody know? Or is it low? Look at that. What do you know? That's pretty cool. This is pretty useful. I would have used this for a bunch of things, but I guess it doesn't work with strings and so on. Also, I think the graphic design is really sucky because it's basically emphasizing the headers and these things more than it's emphasizing the data, which just doesn't make any sense. All right, very quick. Okay, so a few things there, but let's just have a really quick look through some of my list. Okay, so cached function we can actually now take off as having been. Let me just put that into. I guess that's in the done list because it's achieved with once, right? So I can go ahead and put that. Cached function is no longer in this list, and it just goes over here. Okay, session data we just talked about. Dynamic, yeah, this is an interesting one. This is something Lou will probably have a comment on. Dynamic display. So what is the point of this? What is the point of this? Oh yes, this is something where we're simply saying, give me a plot, okay?
By the way, it looks like your kernel is still stuck in this session.
Oh, that's bad. By the way, we're hearing a bunch of typing. Could somebody mute themselves? Okay, so we have a plot, and imagine that we could say dynamic display of this plot, and all we get is the analog of what we're doing in dynamic geographics. Okay?
I don't know what that means.
Well, where does it think we are? I don't know. It thinks we're in Champagne. Okay, fine. So you see what it's doing, right? It's moving in the coordinate system here.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
So the question is, and in this particular case, it is able to generate higher resolution stuff here. But my question is, why can we not do that just with an ordinary graphic? So in other words, let me make a more sophisticated graphic. Let's say I make an array plot of I don't know, array let's see, bool of we're hearing a bunch of background noise, by the way. Co-prime Q of that, let's say, let's make a table. Here, I goes to 100, J goes to 100. Okay, so let's make a more realistic case of this. Okay, so there's my array plot. Actually, let me make that 1,000 instead. Okay, all right, hard to see. Now, wouldn't it be nice if in this plot, right, I could do the exact same thing that I'm doing here with dynamic geographics?
Right, and so there's two issues. One is that array plot and plot are very different in this respect, because plot, if you zoom in, you don't really want to just zoom into the things you've already calculated. You want a
fair enough. I'm more interested in the array plot case.
If you want to pan, then that's easy enough to do. But but for array plot, you have all of the data right there, so it's exactly analogous to dynamic
right. So I'm more interested in the case of you know, the dynamic showcase that is purely taking graphics objects and being able to zoom on them, right?
Where the back end, instead of tiles being served from a server, is just a graphics expression. That seems straightforward. As long as the graphics, I mean, there's some outermost.
I think it's straightforward as well. Yeah, I mean, I would say that this. I mean, let's just see what it's like, because in this case, oh look, I can make this huge. Let me just try something here. Okay, if I say dynamic image,
we have interactive gestures for doing this kind of thing in 3D graphics already, don't we?
Well, you're suggesting that this is something, I mean, there's a scroll in a 3D graphic. Are you suggesting that this be a feature of all graphics objects, or are you suggesting?
I'm not necessarily suggesting that. I was just wondering, I was trying to remember what we do for 3D graphics. Which
yeah, for 3D graphics, you can somehow move yourself and look around, which is kind of confusing at times, but.
Okay, so I'm going to try this and see whether this works. See, actually what I want to do, is that right? Actually, what I want to do is this. I want to just take that and put that in image. And I want to make that simply a dynamic image. And I think, what will this do? Wow, that's funky. What does dynamic image do?
I think it wants an image.
That's kind of weird and silly of it. Okay. All right, what's wrong here? So image on its own of this should just work. Yeah, there we go. Great. Okay, so now what does dynamic image do? Why doesn't that work? Why does, well, let's see.
Try %7.
Yeah, okay.
Some sort of evaluation problem. I mean, nobody here has worked on dynamic image as far as I know.
Right. Well, this is a bug. Sushma, this is for you. Go get it tracked down.
But it would seem to be straightforward to build. I mean, based on dynamic image, to have something like dynamic graphics seems like a straightforward thing.
I agree. The only question is what you're raising is, should it happen by default?
Well,
in other words, for example, in particular,
I mean, 3D graphics are also different in that they don't correspond to the, I mean, you're viewing them, you're sort of looking into the screen to view them. They're not represented, you know, as a 2D region.
Fine. All right. Well, why don't we investigate what happened to dynamic image, and then let's see whether we can make a dynamic graphics that is of the same type, although obviously it's not working on the bitmap. Right? It's working using the same controls.
On the graphic expression, right. Yeah.
Right, but then the controls would look basically just like this, right?
So wait. So first of all, well, I guess we could have a little wrapper, although I'm not. So it seems that dynamic image is basically just busted right now completely. None of the documentation examples work.
Okay.
Right. So I guess I'm not sure. If I mean, well, right. So dynamic, and so in 11.2, dynamic image of graphics of disk just plain works, and you can zoom in and pan. So I don't think we need a separate.
Okay, hold on. So you're saying if I do this, right? So you're saying it's horribly anti-aliasing this thing.
Well, that's because you did it at 72 DPI or something crazy,
Okay,
right?
so if you say that what I'm doing here, if I did array plots here, you're claiming that this would work. I do not believe that. But I might be wrong. Okay, well, by the way, I think this shape, well, whatever. What the heck is it doing?
Well, it rasterized it, right?
Well, that's just crazy, right? So that's what we don't want it to do.
Right.
So we want this to work without rasterization, and it's really just a question of, of drawing something with the right plot ranges.
Yeah. Would we want a continuous zoom here?
Interesting question. I mean, I would find the jump zooms just fine. I don't know what the UX for a continuous zoom would look like. What do you think? I mean, the continuous zoom for a 3D object is with the scroll wheel.
I have been exploring in geographics the possibility of having a continuous zoom, and for the most part, it works.
Really? How? Yeah. I see. By having the tile, and then, but doesn't the tile have anti-aliasing issues? Aliasing issues, rather.
Yeah. We would have to accept those, but geographics already does, in the sense that geographics presents the maps.
You've been trying to defuzz geographics forever.
Yes, and we're still working on that. But
this seems like just a formula for getting more fuzzed by allowing it to go between rendered zoom levels.
Yes, but it also gives a more continuous experience, which and at least for graphics, because we would have to render. I mean, with graphics, there wouldn't be a problem in that sense.
Presumably. Well, that's worth looking at. But why don't we try to see whether we can get something that just makes use of the same UX framework that dynamic image uses, and see whether we can make a dynamic graphics that works that way. I don't even know whether dynamic graphics. What's that?
Who knows about dynamic image? Who can I?
Well, somebody in Charlie's team, but I would imagine if you ask, I'm thinking Piotr maybe.
I'll ask Shadi.
I think Marcus.
I'll ask Shadi.
Oh, okay. All right, let me just ask about a couple of other things here which happen to be on my list. Auto flatten, which is turned into flattened. What is the status of that?
We have been discussing the syntax and whether.
What is this?
What is this? Says Itai.
It's a version of sequence in the same way that nothing is a version of sequence bracket bracket.
Okay, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Not necessarily.
Well, in the absence of a much more compelling argument than not necessarily, I'm going to stick by my initial comment.
Okay. Well, anyway. Okay, we don't need to discuss this right here. But Jose, you were saying you were investigating it.
Yes, we are working on the syntax and the properties and the second argument, etc.
All right. So but what does this thing actually do?
Let's not do that in this meeting. Okay.
I will explain later. Yeah.
Okay. Let's
Fine, then we can move it to the LCC meeting where I can yell and scream about it.
Fine. Fine. You're going to like this function, Itai. It's
I am not
I know you're not convinced. We already know you're not convinced.
You'll like it more with every moment you spend implementing it.
Okay. Does anybody know? I just want to check down the status of a few things, and then we're going to move to a different meeting. The n-body evolution stuff, is that being handled by you guys, or is that? I know Rob is working on that, but who's tracking that?
As far as I know, after Rob's prototype, nothing has happened.
Okay. Does it need another meeting?
I think so. I think we should discuss how to proceed.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've just got a few bits and pieces that are listed on here.
But just a quick note, Michael Trott should be involved in that meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Find equational proof.
Mm-hmm.
I was told you would have a status report on that here.
We merged it yesterday, and we have been working in recent days on the typesetting, and we are still completing the documentation. So I haven't heard in the last few days from Jonathan. He was working on the axiomatic theory. So my impression is that we will just have many examples with different axioms theories rather than having an accessible repository for the moment. We can think of that.
I thought we agreed we were just going to put it in the data repository.
Well, but the problem with the data repository is that we cannot
instantiate the variable names.
Exactly.
I see.
So the alternative idea was to create an axiomatic theory symbol that would return.
Yeah, which is a cool idea and which I like.
Yes, but at the moment, I think we don't have enough material to put there, and it would be nicer to think a bit more.
Fine. Okay, just put a bunch of examples in.
Exactly. Yes, we are thinking also on how to reuse proof object for the synthetic geometry project.
Okay.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
Talking of which, whatever happened to the functions line through, circle through, etc.?
They are under vigorous discussion, and we'll be having a meeting about them tomorrow. And they may, well, I need to. I don't know what their current status is, in part because I need to review what they've sent me and see how much I need to yell and scream tomorrow.
Okay. Whatever happened to, what is it called? Around.
Around.
Around
Yes.
in the head branch or not?
No, we didn't merge it for 11.3. So we're still working on this, and in particular, we need functions that can handle it and Wolfram Alpha returning it, etc. So
okay, it's going to be very nice.
Yeah. This will be very useful.
Okay.
And there will be also an update of the visualization functions to handle plots with crosses and ellipses, etc.
Good. All right. Okay. We got more stuff I would like to go over, which is in my big long to-do list, but we'll do that a different time. All right. Okay. By the way, for people who are on the live stream, we're actually going to continue that the next meeting happens to also be being live streamed, and the next meeting should be for those the end of the network packet capture story. So for people, so I think nobody in this meeting is probably in that meeting as well. So see you guys soon.
See you.
Wow.
Bye.
Bye.